After a long couple of days of committee meetings, we have the College Football Playoff Committee chair here himself to shed some light on the conversations that went on in the Gaylord Texan Conference Room. Jeff Long, Bonnie Bernstein here. We got Doug Chapman and Pete Fiutak. And let's start with Oregon. Obviously, getting over the hump against Stanford was a good thing. But when you look at the Ducks move into the top four, Jeff, how much does it have to do with their performance, their schedule, rather than Ole Miss losing and getting bumped out?
Yeah, Oregon has added to their already strong resume. I mean, we already know they have the Michigan State win. They had the road game win at UCLA, and then adding a Stanford game, which is a good team, good opponent. You know, again, it strengthened their resume and put them in position to move up when someone lost above them.
I think the 5-6 situation is kind of interesting in Alabama and TCU. They had a common opponent in West Virginia. They both beaten the Mountaineers. Alabama beat them in a neutral site, but that was the Georgia Dome, so that was kind of a home game, whereas TCU went into Morgantown in sloppy conditions and beat the Mountaineers. You talked about the fact that the committee said Alabama looked better on film. Can you talk specifically to what they saw on film that they liked better about the Tide rather than TCU?
Well, again, I think they looked at those games. It was a 10-point win for Alabama against West Virginia, and it's a much closer game, obviously, with TCU and West Virginia. So, you know, those were the things we discussed about how those teams played in those games and tried to compare them against the performance in those games with the common opponent.
Jeff, with Mississippi State just squeezing by an unranked Arkansas, was there ever any conversation in the room about switching them and Florida State around, or is it still clear-cut Mississippi State 1, Florida State 2?
Well, we don't, in the committee room, we don't talk about switching. We don't really switch teams around. We compare teams against each other, and then we vote them. So, you know what, we had those discussions, and we voted, and the committee felt, the majority of the committee felt that Michigan State still deserved to be number one, and followed by Florida State.
Hi, Jeff. The teams will sort themselves out. I'm more interested in the process itself. From the first week to this week, how much more efficient was the process? How much easier was it? And did the committee members fall into the same roles? And how much faster did this go, or did it even go faster than the first time around?
You know, we start over at the very beginning of the process and we work it through. It did go a little bit smoother simply because we're all more accustomed to the process. You know, we go through from a pool of 6 down to 3. We hold over teams that don't get ranked. And then, so we got that process down. But it is a different process, different than any other polls or rankings that people do. So it was more efficient, but we also had more time to discuss teams as well.
Jeff, we've invited a couple of our insiders to join the discussion for Notre Dame. We have Alan Pickett, who, of course, is one of the best Irish running backs ever, and Joe Rexrode, who's been covering Michigan State for more than a decade now. Alan, you start first.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate you being on. I come to you from a Notre Dame perspective, and my question is probably 2 weeks old, maybe 3 weeks old. But I just want to know, is there any value in how you lose? And I know I have to call Notre Dame's loss to Florida State a loss, even though they pushed them around the field the entire game and points were taken off the board. Is there any value in how you lose, and does that give you any bit of strength, or is it one of those, to the victor goes the spoils?
No, certainly. How you lose and how good the team is that you lost to certainly plays a role. Notre Dame's loss to Florida State is about as good a loss as I think you can have. They're the second-ranked team, and they played them down to the wire and to very close to the end. So, yes, I think Notre Dame has seen value in that. Notre Dame's signature win thus far is, I think, a 5-4 Stanford team. So Notre Dame has more work to do, just like all these teams do, but I think they are ranked where the committee believes they deserves to be thus far.
Notre Dame certainly has some big road opportunities coming up that will give them the chance to move up. Joe, how about your question for Michigan State?
Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, Jeff, my question is about non-league scheduling for conference teams. Is there any talk at all about rewarding good non-league scheduling? I asked this, of course, Michigan State. You could argue Michigan State would have been better off not scheduling that game at Oregon at this point, being undefeated, being higher in the rankings. Is that a priority at all?
Well, first of all, the committee doesn't try to send messages by the fact of how we rank will send the message. I think the the coaches and the athletic directors will understand, what the committee values. But I think Michigan State has been is certainly in our consideration that they went to Oregon and played on the road, and yeah, that is factored into where Michigan State's ranked at this point in time.
Jeff Long, College Football Playoff Committee Chair, thank you so much for the insight. Why don't we do this again next week, shall we? Same time, same station?
I'll be here if you Skype me.
All right, Jeff, thank you.